What's up, everybody? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel, and then follow me on social media on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter so you guys don't miss any of our content over the course of this season. All right, let's talk some basketball. So this next tier I have titled Teams Hitting Traditional Championship Benchmarks, but that have playoff question marks. And so that to me is where I have the Clippers. The big question marks I have for the Clippers are kind of similar to some ones that I have for other teams. Like they're not a good defensive rebounding team. That to me is another kind of like hallmark. I pulled some stats for you. I'm prepped for a Thunder argument, Sam. Just wait. I pulled some stats about defensive rebounding in recent NBA champions, and so there's some concerning stuff there. They're not a good defensive rebounding team. They are actually a better paint attacking team than you'd think. The Clippers are actually 15th in points in the paint per 100 possessions. Yeah. I do think they have more scoring resiliency in the sense that I just think they're a better type of they play, in my opinion, they take a lot of the same shots that Boston does, although fewer threes, but they're just better at it. They're better at playing that brand of basketball, I think, in terms of that slow down half court environment. They're top 5 in both half court offense and defense. That's usually a big a hallmark for a championship contender. They're 6th in clutch net rating. That's another hallmark for a championship contender. And again, like you mentioned, to me, let's just put it this way. Kawhi's a better player than Tatum. Would you agree?
Okay. Yes. I think Kawhi is the player I would take. If we were drafting players for a playoff series right now, I would take Kawhi at number 2 behind you.
Really? There's a take. Yes. Okay, so for the record, yes. I'm generally super high on Kawhi too.
A healthy Kawhi, to be clear.
But to your point, Kawhi Leonard brings a scoring resiliency to the playoffs that I think is super valuable when we get to this point. I think James Harden too. I think there's less pressure on him in this playoff run than there was last year, in the sense that I think this team can kind of withstand a bad James Harden night in a better way than the Sixers could. So I'm really, really high on the Clippers too. Again, it really just comes down to, for me, and again, I'm not even going to talk about health here. The only thing it really comes down to for me is they're a bad defensive rebounding team. They do take a lot of pull-up jumpers, and we have seen them go cold like they did against Denver in 2020, although that was a long time ago. Other thing too is they're a really bad transition defense, but I feel like I'm being kind of nitpicky. You're high on the Clippers. Tell us tell us why, I should say.
Okay, so Kawhi Leonard this season has missed, I believe, 5 games so far. Coming down the stretch last season, I believe he missed, I think it was 6 games in their last 50 games, maybe 8 games in their last 50 games, somewhere along those lines. Again, the problem is that he did not stay healthy for the playoffs. I think any conversation, you said you wanted to ignore the health. I'm sorry, but any conversation with the Clippers revolves around the health on some level. In the 4 years that they have had Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, they are a plus 12 per 100 possessions when Paul George and Kawhi Leonard share the court. That is NBA title worthy. That is elite of the elite of the elite. These guys, when they take the court together, the Clippers win games. They are fantastic. To me, I've loved everything that they've seen. You bring up James Harden. The key is that when he was the point guard and the number 2 option on the Philadelphia 76ers last season, their primary action was they were going to try and run a 1-5 ball screen with Joel Embiid. Joel was going to pop into the mid-range. Maybe sometimes it'd be an empty. Maybe sometimes James would be trying to get to his pull-up jumper. There'd be different machinations of it. James does not have to be the primary guy this year. James can be a combo breaker for them. If for whatever reason, they are able to, an opposing team is able to shut down Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. You can't really shut down Kawhi Leonard at this point, in my opinion, but if a team is able to make his life more difficult, well, not enough teams have 3 legitimate point of attack defenders with size and with quickness to be able to cause problems for all of these guys, which means you can just go into 1-5 ball screen with James Harden and Ivica Zubac, and then have Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and somebody like Norman Powell, who's been elite of the elite of the elite in spot-up situations this season. surrounding him, and you can play 5 out, and that's going to be able to create all sorts of problems that way. And that's like your second or third option, right? They have so many different ways to be able to attack a defense. That's why they have a top 3 offense in the NBA, and why it wouldn't surprise me if by the end of the year they actually have the best offense in the NBA. As long as these guys stay healthy, I think they are the most dangerous offensive team. On top of it, I think Kawhi has been better than what we've seen in the last couple of years defensively this season. Paul George remains an elite defender who can handle point of attack situations, getting over the top of screens, using his length to disrupt actions that way. You mentioned Terrence Mann can obviously do that. They use him a lot more than they use Paul George in that scenario. But I think Paul, if you get him going in the playoffs, he's going to be able to do that. The only issue, like you said, is the size one. I am with you. I have worries about the fact that Zubac is really their size-based counter. And like, I actually don't know what their counter is to Zubac right now. That is my number one worry. What do they do if they have to go small? I actually don't really know what like a small lineup looks like for them, given that PJ Tucker has been like MIA here for the recent while.
Do you think they intend to, do you think that was why they didn't buy him out and why they're trying to get him to kind of refocus and come back? Do you think it centers around them wanting to have him as an ace in the hole if they need to use him?
I think it's more that they could have his contract as an expiring $10 million.
Gotcha. That makes sense
for the offseason. But like he still has next year. That was a huge win for Daryl Morey to get off of that deal within the James Harden trade. But look, I mean, it probably plays like a small role in it, like as a potential option. But I think much more it's, have him as a $10 million expiring for the offseason when they don't have like a crazy number of contracts they can do. Like, honestly, is their best small lineup something crazy like James Harden, Kawhi, Paul George, like Powell, Mann, or even like is it like Russ, given his like ability to go up tempo and like try and beat opposing teams down the court? Like, do you involve him in your best small lineup? They don't have like a great answer.
I'd probably go Powell, Mann, but I have noticed the same thing where like when these Clippers go small, it doesn't look the same as it did a few years ago when it was like a Marcus Morris out there, or it was a Nick Batum, where it was just like another 6'8" guy that just kind of added. So at least they were like longer, if that makes sense. But at the same time, like Zubac is on the short list of guys that like you'd love to have for a matchup with Jokic, like as well. Like, so 100%. Like, yeah, I love this Clippers team. I love their character too. They just give me championship vibes. And that's why I put them in that. That's why I titled that tier like hitting championship benchmarks. Cause like, I think there are a lot of teams, especially in the modern NBA, that like, I don't want to say cut corners, but that view the regular season as almost unnecessary. And I feel like the NBA does a good job of chewing and spitting those teams out.
We're the primary example of this.
Yes.
Jason, the Clippers were the primary example of this for 3 years. Like, that's exactly right. They have not cut corners this year. It's really important.
Exactly. And I love that the NBA tends to chew up and spit out teams that don't take the regular season seriously. It's one of my favorite things about the league. Like, don't cheat the game, and the game won't cheat you back.